Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It is your host, Emmanuel Isaiah Smith, and this lecture is entitled The Ape-like Characteristics of Mankind, Correlations and Analytical Examinations into Gang-stalking. Human beings are apes. Every biologist in the country will agree with that. Human beings are what scientists call great apes and are distant relatives of gorillas, the apes that you see in various continents around the world, and other such primates. What separates humans from the kinds of apes that you see in the zoo is that humans don't have fur and they have higher intelligence than the typical ape. Ultimately, however, humans are in the same familial category as primates. Now, this is important because in my estimation, there are two kinds of people that exist on this earth. There are the kinds who embrace their ape-like nature, and there are the kinds who have divorced themselves from their ape-like nature in favor of a higher ideal. Now, before getting into the ape-like behavior that gang stalkers exhibit on a daily basis, I'd like to examine instances of both kinds of people. So a person who embraces their ape-like nature or their primitive nature are the kinds of people that engage in acts of violence, silly acts of mischief, various criminal actions that require long sentences such as rape, child abuse, sabotage, and others. It's easy for a person to give in to these types of behaviors because these are the types of behaviors that any ape in the jungle will participate in with no conscience, no sense of community or society, no sense of the betterment of civilization, and no sense to their own personal trajectory through their life. What is gang stalking? It is a federally funded surveillance, disruption, and confrontation mechanism in which people respond to a series of signals, cues, verbal commands, vehicular maneuvers, and more in order to find, irritate, confront, and yes, attack a targeted individual. Gang stalkers participate in these activities with no conscience whatsoever, almost as if they lack a soul in favor of the activity that they are participating in. I've oftentimes referred to gang stalking as monkey business. The reason I refer to gang stalking as monkey business is because it's just that. Ladies and gentlemen, the primates have overrun the control station. What is the control station? Well, I submit to you as I sit here in Doral, Florida on Thursday, July 3rd, 2025 at approximately 5:30 p.m. next to the Gold View gated community on Northwest 46th Lane that the control station is the United States federal government. What does the United States federal government do? Well, in order to understand what the United States federal government does, you must have some semblance of what free market capitalism is. If you understand free market capitalism, which is the socio-economic political philosophy of this country, then you will understand what the control station is, and you will furthermore understand why I say that the apes, the gang stalkers, have not only infiltrated, but have disrupted, undermined, subverted, polluted, and corrupted the control station. What is free market capitalism? Free market capitalism is an ideology that asserts that the markets, rather than the government, should control the means of production and should have direct influence on what industries are successful and what industries are not successful. Free market capitalism asserts that consumer behaviors, namely buying behaviors, will determine the markets. And what are the markets? The markets are various industries that are observed by economists as what might be called the marketplace. The marketplace is simply a system of buying and selling. Okay? For example, take the automotive industry. There are two kinds of cars that exist in the automotive industry. There are gasoline or diesel-powered vehicles. Actually, there are three. There are gasoline or diesel-powered vehicles. There are hybrid vehicles which use a combination of diesel, gasoline, and electricity. And then there are electric-powered vehicles, which are purely electrically powered vehicles. Now, although there have been a surge in consumer purchases of hybrid vehicles and electrical vehicles, gasoline or diesel-powered vehicles are ultimately, by and large, far and away, the more preferred vehicle of the North American population. Now, why is that? Well, there are a number of reasons. One of them is familiarity. Most people who are raised in the United States, whose parents are owners of vehicles, use gasoline-powered vehicles. Vehicles where you go to a gas pump, fill the tank up, and drive the car till it gets low, then you fill the tank up again. There is a cost per gallon associated with these vehicles, and they're easy to watch, they're easy to monitor, they're easy to operate. And because of that familiarity, most people in North America prefer gasoline-powered vehicles. Now, what is the benefit to gasoline versus hybrid or electric? Well, for one, gasoline-powered vehicles are cheaper than hybrid or electric vehicles. Furthermore, a person may not feel the need to learn a whole new system of powering their vehicle. For example, a gasoline-powered vehicle has a typical engine which has cylinders, pistons, an oil compartment, and so forth, and they are gasoline powered. Over a number of years, with wear and tear, you might need a tune-up or two, and a brake job or two, maybe other routine maintenance to keep your car running. And at some point, if you decide you need a new vehicle, it wouldn't be difficult to purchase a new vehicle if you have the means. With hybrid or electric, their engines are a bit different, and their charging mechanisms are different. Now, a person may not want to put out the extra money for an electric vehicle or a hybrid vehicle if they don't have to. The monthly payments on a hybrid or electric vehicle are going to be higher, and the maintenance and upkeep is going to be a learning experience as opposed to with a gasoline vehicle where a lot of people do their own maintenance right there in their front driveway or their backyard, depending on what their preference is. So because of that, car manufacturers typically, even the ones that offer hybrid or electric vehicles, typically sell more gasoline vehicles to consumers even to the present day. So with respect to that, the markets determine that gasoline-powered vehicles are here to stay, should be made clean and effective, and are the principal choice for American drivers. That's an example of free market capitalism. Consumer behavior drives the markets. Ultimately, free market capitalism will determine how much a person can earn on their job based on their merits and their value to a particular company or organization. A good example of this would be, for argument's sake, we'll say a movie actor. There are movie actors that realistically make $20 million a movie. No one is here to say that that's wrong or right. Me personally, I think a person should be able to make whatever their merits, talents, and work ethic demand. So if a movie actor whose name and presence are in a movie can cause that movie to earn $500 million worldwide in revenues, then that movie actor or actress is entitled to $20 million of that $500 million. It's only fair, quite frankly. The same can be said about professional athletes and so forth. If your talent on a professional sports team can generate $1 billion for that sports team and various revenue generators over the course of 10 years, then that athlete is entitled to $200 million of that money over the course of 10 years. It's not so much a situation where a company has to consider, well, the minimum wage is only $18 an hour, so why should we pay somebody $20 million, $40 million, $60 million to do a job when there are citizens throughout the country that are making just enough to survive weekly. It's not about that. And quite frankly, in a free market capitalist society, that is not a consideration. In a free market capitalist society, a person is entitled to earn whatever it is their talents and merits generate. Now, here's what gang stalking is all about. Gang stalking is about the isolation of a targeted individual from the free market capitalist mechanism, thereby driving them into a mechanism, as I'm looking at a gang stalker right to my immediate left, who appears to have stopped his bicycle and is observing me with his cellular phone for no good reason at all, just to make his presence known. Now, what gang stalking does is it drives a targeted individual through a system of disruptions, sabotage, and confrontations into a mechanism to where they are not able to freely compete in American society, as the stalker to my immediate left stops his bicycle again with earpieces on, probably gathering information and data as we speak. So, despite my irritation at the spectacle to my immediate left, I'm going to continue the lecture. Gang stalking drives a targeted individual into a mechanism to where they are not able to effectively compete in the free market capitalist society that we see. The goal is to ultimately drive the targeted person into a system of repeat detainment, institutionalization, including incarceration, so as to systematically subdue that person in spite of the constitutional precept of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, which targeted individuals are extrajudicially yanked from by this thuggish and yes, apish program. The federal government of the United States was put together in 1776 with the drafting of the U.S. Constitution during the constitutional conventions. The United States Constitution is the overarching and supreme law of the land. Unfortunately, the United States federal government has decided to totally divorce itself from constitutional precepts, from the Bill of Rights, from justice, and from the rule of law. As it turns out, the United States federal government, and yes, indeed, its Congress, have rendered themselves, particularly and progressively over the past 60 years, as little more than a body of lawmakers that approve trillions of dollars of taxpayer money on expenditures that make their cronies rich. Government contracts is what I'm talking about, ladies and gentlemen. $2 trillion a year in government contracts go out to companies who are looking to do nothing more than to enrich the executives that head those companies up, often at the expense of the American taxpayer, rule of law, inalienable rights, and the United States Constitution. I mention inalienable rights because inalienable rights are the reason that I do this program. Inalienable rights are those rights that are given to a person by God or nature, and are rights that cannot be taken from any person born into this world by any man, woman, child, company, or government legally. If a person's inalienable rights are being challenged or even taken by a man, woman, child, company, or government, that is called a crime against humanity. Now, this thuggish system of signaling, disruption, attack, sabotage, and mobbing that has existed here in the United States at least since the 1960s, but definitely since the mid-2000s, is a crime against humanity because it violates a targeted individual's inalienable rights. And I'm going to say something else. The Congress of the United States has decided to keep silent on the gang-stalking mechanism. That's fine and good. No one can force Congress to debate gang-stalking on the Senate floor. But ultimately, the gang-stalking mechanism and protocol equals the downfall of the United States Constitution in its entirety, the downfall of American rules of law, and the downfall of the federal government's duty, which each congressperson swears to uphold in the interest of the United States Constitution. It's the downfall of all of the above, and it is quite frankly the most disgusting, irritating, and violent component of any government that has ever existed in the history of mankind. Now, if there are any parties, political parties, or lawmakers that are listening to me right now that are of the mindset, well, this gentleman should talk nicer to us and maybe we'd respond, well, to hell with that. I, as an American citizen and as an American taxpayer, don't owe you anything but obedience to the law and my taxpayer dollars. That is the only thing that I owe you. I do not have to talk sweetly or gently to you as an American lawmaker who draws a six-figure salary from the taxpayer so you can send $2 trillion of his money to your friends who are going to fund your political campaigns. I am not going to talk lullabies to you about the infringement of my constitutional rights. I am not going to talk sweetly to you about the infringement of my state rights. And I am not going to talk gently to you about the violation of my inalienable rights, which you signed away with a pen and a vote without even knowing what on earth you were unleashing on American society. Furthermore, if you're an American citizen, particularly an American citizen who knows me personally, who may have snooped through my web pages online, looking for something either to mimic or get upset about, maybe you should change the channel. Because quite frankly, if you had the audacity, the intelligence, the foresight, or the character to debate gang stalking, you'd have done it by now, either with me or with somebody else. But because you, like the Congress, decide to keep your mouth shut about this egregious act that violates so many international laws that I can't count them all, you, in my opinion, are irrelevant to the discussion because you have nothing to say about the discussion, because you've decided to sit in a corner and watch guys like myself go to administrative war with this animal, eat it while you eat popcorn and drink soda, watching the sparks fly. You, my friend, can go and get a box of powdered donuts, go sit in your living room or basement, just eat them and do whatever the heck it is you do, because I'm the one that's going to continue talking about this, as I have the right to under the First Amendment to the United States Constitution. The primates, the apes, the gorillas, the chimpanzees, yes, the humans have overrun the control station. Now, how are we going to divorce ourselves as a human race from the ape-like tendencies that plague the thinking of mankind on a daily basis through programs like Gang-stalking and through other organized thuggery? Well, for one, you can learn to love something. A person who could participate in something as ignorant as gang-stalking doesn't have enough love in their heart to see how ridiculous the program is. Me personally, I love a lot of things. I love my significant other. I love my progeny. I love my work. I love my company. I love knowledge. I love history. I love the free and open web. I love theological discussions. I love philosophical discussions. I love various forms of entertainment so long as it's well produced and meaningful. There's a lot of things on this earth that I love. And that love is what fuels me to continue to fight for the sustenance of my inalienable rights. Gang stalkers don't appear to love anything, and quite frankly, they don't appear to value anything but carnage, chaos, and harm. And that is essentially what the gang stalking mechanism is about. It's about causing problems where there is no problem. It's about causing disorganization where there is organization, and it's about harming individuals who would otherwise be safe without their presence. Yes, the United States federal government has authorized a treasonous and disgusting construct with this program. And you know what? The United States federal government has not, under any circumstances, invited its populace to divorce itself from its ape-like nature. And yes, ladies and gentlemen, without technology, without education, without theology, without love, human beings are no better than apes. Ultimately, you can go into any college or university in the country, and classes are offered to assist young people from the ages of 18 to 24. It gives them an open invitation to divorce themselves from their ape-like nature and embrace something more noble, something more worthwhile, something that will assist them in becoming more human and less ape. You know, a gorilla wanders through the jungle using only its personal faculties and its desire to survive as its driving force. What does a gorilla do? It searches for rations. It mates. It finds shelter in bad weather. It organizes, it watches, it avoids danger, and it uses its very primitive but very persistent and very present animalistic tendencies to continue surviving. Now, a gorilla does not have a sophisticated idea of what survival is. Rather, it simply survives because survival is its instinct. Survival is what feels right to the gorilla. If it feels a threat to its survival, it either runs from it or it fights the threat. A gorilla doesn't have an IQ. A gorilla cannot earn a college degree. A gorilla does not have a worldview. Its perspective is only in its immediate surroundings and what it can do to survive day to day. Now, 2 million years ago, we saw the first Homo sapiens appear on the earth. Those Homo sapiens had similar instincts to the gorilla that I just mentioned. They didn't have a worldview because they didn't know what the world was. They didn't have an IQ because there was no education. They weren't able to attain sophisticated levels of intellect because those mechanisms simply weren't present in the world. 2 million years ago, the first Homo sapiens that appeared on the earth were very much like apes, not only in appearance, but in the way they lived their lives. They hunted for food, they mated, they watched for potential dangers, and if a potential danger presented itself, it fought the danger or it ran from the danger in the interest of his own survival. That's just the law of the jungle. And there was a time where humans, namely the first humans, the Homo sapiens, lived the law of the jungle exactly the way apes, monkeys, gorillas, chimpanzees, orangutans, and baboons lived the law of the jungle. The only thing that separated humans from the animals around it was their ability to adapt, their ability to recognize, and their ability to form complex or rational thoughts. That is the only thing separating the human from the ape. Now, with gang stalking, humans have regressed back to an ape-like state. No more are we concerned about complex topics like rule of law, government, inalienable rights, constitutionality, okay, the belief in a higher creator, okay. These concepts have become null and void in the midst of the gang-stalking chaos. With gang-stalking, you are blindly obeying a set of cues and signals that are coming from somewhere. You don't know where, but they're coming from somewhere. And these signals, cues, and so forth, vehicular maneuvers lead to nothing but catastrophe. They lead to political instability, they lead to ignorance, and yes, they lead to monkey-like behavior. Now, I've experienced gang stalking in the 3 states that I've lived in. I've lived in Tennessee, I've lived in Ohio, and I've lived in Florida. I've experienced gang stalking in all 3. And quite frankly, it follows a pattern of disruption. It follows a pattern of confrontation. It follows a pattern of mobbing. And it follows a pattern of something that I touched on in my last video, hubris. Now, what is hubris and how does it factor in to monkey-like, ape-like, or gorilla-like behavior? Well, there is a psychological mindset that leads to hubris. And that psychological mindset is called ignorance. Now, from the 1960s to around, we'll say 2010, we saw a flurry of actors, entertainers, sports people, scientists, politicians, designers, artists, radio personalities, and other people who were above average thinkers. They were above average in their thinking. They were above average in their courage. They were above average in their maneuverings. They were above average in their abilities. They were above average in their talents. And they were above average in their ability to participate in their activity to a degree where people were willing to pay to see them perform in big arenas. Some in movie theaters, others in outdoor venues, some on the radio, some buy VHS tapes and cassette tapes and DVDs and so forth to hear this person, to see this person, to listen to this person, to witness this person. Or those people, if it's a group of people, for example. People like this at some point created in American society the concept of a phenomenon, a human phenomenon. Someone that captivates the human mind so deeply that they want a daily dose of that person. It could be on television, it could be on radio, it could be on cable, it could be in a video game, it could be on the internet. Now, certainly there are people that achieved a level of fulfillment from taking in whatever this person had to offer. But then there were other people in various institutions, particularly religious institutions, that said, you know what, we don't like these people because they're idols. They're no better than the working man. Who the heck is that person to make this amount of money doing movies? Or who the heck is that person to make this amount of money doing radio? Or who the heck is that person to make this amount of money playing sports? Or who the heck is this person to make this amount of money doing TV spots? And eventually we saw, particularly in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, we saw a slew of these talented, smart, hardworking, and courageous people dying under mysterious circumstances in the prime of their lives, as two scooter heads drive right past me synchronously on their scooters, just to be seen, just to be present. It's probably some symbolic gesture they're doing, some threat of harm, who knows? Gang stalkers do a lot of stuff these days, but I digress. ultimately, we saw particularly in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, we saw a slew of these talented people, we call them celebrities, die under mysterious circumstances at the prime of their life. Okay? Everyone has their favorite celebrity that passed away mysteriously in their prime. That happened a lot, didn't it, here in the United States? We didn't see that happen very much in other countries, did we? We didn't see that happen a lot in Canada. We didn't see it happen a lot in Europe. We didn't see it happen a lot in the African countries. We didn't see it happen a lot in Australia. We didn't see it happen a lot really anywhere but here in the United States. Why? Why is it that so many celebrities wound up dead under mysterious circumstances here in the United States, but nowhere else in the world? And I'll tell you exactly why it is. It's because there is a mechanism here in the United States that seeks to eliminate people who get too popular, even if those people are what we call trendsetters or game changers. For example, political figures. We saw a lot of political figures in the United States die under mysterious circumstances as well, didn't we? I mean, I could go down the list. I can't name a whole bunch off the top of my head right now, but John F. Kennedy, JFK, Martin Luther King Jr., Malcolm X, Huey Newton, JFK's son actually died mysteriously in a plane crash. There have been several. There have been several political movers and shakers in the United States who have died under mysterious circumstances. There have been lots of celebrities in the United States that have died under mysterious circumstances. But keep in mind, what do they all have in common? They all died in the prime of their life when they had so much more to offer the world. Okay? We could go into the athletes and entertainers and singers and actors and all those people as well. Same thing. They died under mysterious circumstances in the prime of their life in the United States. Now, what does that have to do with gang stalking? Well, I'll bring you back to my central component of this lecture. The primates have overrun the control station. Now, why is that relevant? Why is that relevant? It's relevant because this. A lot of those celebrities, actors, entertainers, and politicians were likely murdered using gang-stalking protocols. It was early manifestations of gang-stalking. Keep in mind, COINTELPRO is the spiritual progenitor of gang-stalking. That was started in the 1960s by the FBI in conjunction with the Department of Justice. They wanted to eliminate the Black Panther Party, the Ku Klux Klan, the American Communist Party, and various other political dissident groups that it thought were subversive to society. So it put together basically an open-air community attack mechanism in which citizens were used as weapons against the members of those groups. Now, politically, okay, clandestine operations mean something. Okay? Celebrities are not always looked at so greatly by the religious components of this country. Don't be surprised if the religious components of this country got together and helped cause the death of some of those popular celebrities and politicians. Okay, there's a Bible verse in the books of Moses in the Old Testament that tells it's basically Yahweh, the God of the Hebrews, talking to the Hebrews, telling them, do not worship idols made of brass, stone, or steel. And the reason that this is important in this discussion on celebrities in general and gang stalking in particular is because Yahweh, the God of the Hebrews, told Moses to tell his followers, do not worship idols made out of these metals. Why is that important? It's important because as Moses was leading the children of Israel out of slavery, out of Egypt, where they had been held for 400 years as slaves, into the promised land, which we know now today to be Palestine, or today Palestine/Israel, it was promised to Moses by the God of the Hebrews as a fulfillment of the promise to Abraham, who is considered the progenitor of all Israeli people. We will lead you to the land of milk and honey. And ultimately, the land of milk and honey was filled to the brim with what we know today to be Arab tribes who worshiped gods that were not the gods of the Hebrews. For example, they worshiped a god named Baal. They worshiped Baal El. They worshiped the Baal of the groves. They worshiped Astarte, who we know today to be Astaroth. They worshipped Pazuzu, who's a wind demon. We see him in the movie The Exorcist terrorize a 15-year-old girl. We know about Beelzebub, who was another deity that was worshipped by some of those Arab tribes. We know about Moloch, the god of child sacrifice. We know about all of these deities that these Arab tribes worshipped. And Moses was essentially saying to his followers that God says, don't do that because these are idols that have been created by man. You should be worshiping the God that created man himself. Because that is the way to salvation, not through worshiping a God that is made out of wood or some other material. Because you're not going to get anywhere with that, because you cannot speak to an idol made of wood. You can speak to him, but he cannot hear you. He cannot speak back to you. So in their habitations and in the field, or wherever they happen to be, they worship the God of the Hebrews, Yahweh. And they did so freely as citizens of their own nation, so long as they were subjected to the Creator in all that they did and said. As another stalker to my right stops to hear me, and mind you, everyone that I've identified during this lecture as a stalker, they're all approaching me on bikes and scooters. None of them are approaching me on foot. And the reason they're not approaching me on foot is because they're given direct orders not to. By whatever the federal liaison is that's sending them over here, or whoever's signaling them over here, they're being signaled over here on bikes and scooters so that they can observe me without actually being too close to me, because I'm apparently this horribly dangerous person. So that's one way you know that they're stalkers, is you see the similarity in how they're traveling. And you see the similarity in their behavior. They keep crossing one side of the street to the side of the street that I'm on, and then they're going the opposite way. I've seen about 6 people do that. So far, they've all been males. They've all been Hispanic. They've all had on t-shirts and shorts, and they've all had on running shoes. And the reason they've all been dressed that way is in case they have to do combat with me. These are all preparation mechanisms. And they're all probably wired from head to toe. And they could probably hear what I'm saying from about 100 yards away. Extreme acts of cowardice, ladies and gentlemen. Extreme acts of cowardice, extreme acts of annoyance. So back to Moses. A lot of Christians feel like celebrities, we'll say the Christian institution in America. We'll say the Christian establishment in America. The Christian establishment in America seems to continue to see celebrities as idols. In the tradition of the idols of old. And I don't put it past any Christian establishment that takes that idol argument to the extreme, from having a hand in the death of celebrities or politicians that are well loved by the people. They will preach from the pulpit that those are idols. They cause people to sin. They are anti-Christian, and they are anti-Christ. So it must be the hand of God that took them off this earth, so that this earth can be a cleaner, more Christian place. And I also wouldn't put it past any Christian, particularly the Christian establishment, particularly today's Christian establishment that has extensive roots in the law enforcement and military mechanism, to try and cause the death of some of these celebrities as a favor to God. Well, they were idols. Didn't Moses preach against idols? Well, let's get rid of them so this can be a Christian country again. All the while facilitating gang-stalking campaigns which use intentional disease spreading against targeted persons who've been selected for this program for various extrajudicial reasons. They facilitate violent hospital care so that people injured by gang stalkers can't get the care they need to get better. For example, a sick or diseased gang stalker is signaled to a targeted individual's location, gets that targeted individual sick, and then the targeted individual will go to a hospital to try and get proper medical care, and the medical staff has been signaled by some cowardly federal liaison in the parking lot not to help the person with the medicine they need to get better. These are the types of mechanisms that are persistent and present in gang stalking. So I bring us back to our central component of this talk. Divorce thyself from your ape nature and embrace a higher ideal. Embrace inalienable rights. Embrace the abolition of chaos. Embrace freedoms and liberties. I would like to spend the next couple of minutes talking about a movie that has been very popular over the past 40 years. It's called Planet of the Apes. In this movie, a very highly intelligent race of apes at some point comes in contact with a human and holds these humans captive. A lot of people find Planet of the Apes interesting, and the reason I think a lot of people find that movie interesting, or that series of movies, that franchise, interesting, is because for some people, watching the Planet of the Apes movie franchise is like looking in the mirror. They see in themselves the monkeys and the apes, and they enjoy watching those images because it reminds them of their self and their families. a lot of humans have a very deep sense of relation to chimpanzees and primates, because I think a lot of people identify with them because they're so human-like in a lot of their daily maneuvering. For example, how they are with their young, how they are with each other, some of the emotions that they portray. For example, if you look at the primates that are captive at your local zoo, they're always very popular. People really enjoy going in there and seeing those animals because there is sort of an interconnection that humans, we, who are great apes ourselves, have with these primates. Furthermore, human DNA and the DNA of primates are very similar. And genetically, and with respect to our DNA, humans are close enough to apes and primates and chimpanzees and gorillas, indeed monkeys, to where any self-respecting biologist in the entire world will honor and uphold that humans are monkeys themselves. I believe some have divorced themselves from that monkey-like nature better than others. Gang stalking will cause you to regress to an ape-like state. Do not fall for it. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, the primates have overrun the control station. Do not fall prey. Be ever vigilant and avoid the menace. Thank you for listening. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It is your host, Emmanuel Isaiah Smith, and this lecture is entitled "The Ape-like Characteristics of Mankind: Correlations and Analytical Examinations into Gang-stalking." Human beings are apes. Every biologist in the country will agree with that. Human beings are what scientists call great apes and are distant relatives of gorillas, the apes that you see in various continents